Springsteen, vous êtes né et vous avez été élevé dans une petite ville du New Jersey qui s'appelle Freehold. Quel genre d'endroit est-ce?
It's a basic small town, you know. I think if you rode through it, you'd probably say, oh, this is a nice little town, you know. There was like 2 or 3 big factories, and then there was a lot of agriculture, you know. There was a lot of farms also in the area. And I think when I lived there, it was probably about 15,000 people maybe, you know. And it was kind of, you know, small-minded and real conservative and a difficult place to live in the 60s, you know. If you had like long hair or if anything different was, you know, suspected, tremendously, you know, feared. So it's pretty similar to most of the small towns, you know, in America.
Sur l'album Born in the USA, dans Surrender, il y a cette phrase: un disque de rock de 3 minutes, on dit plus lent que tout ce qu'on a appris à l'école. Est-ce vrai pour vous?
You know, like in school, there wasn't any particular subject I was good at. You know, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of people that just fall through the bottom of the educational system. You know, not because they're stupid, but because people don't know how to. They don't know how to reach them, number one, and number two, the kids themselves don't know how to open up their own consciousness. You know, like before. Which is what rock and roll did for me. You know, it was like it just opened up my consciousness. It gave me a much wider sense of awareness.
At the time when you got into playing music.
Au moment où vous avez commencé, les Beatles et en général les groupes anglais prédominaient. Est-ce que vous vous en inspiriez? Est-ce que vous rêviez de passer à la télé, de jouer au Shea Stadium, d'être bousculé par la foule dans la rue?
Yeah, I guess I must have, you know. But the main thing I remember in the beginning, my goals were pretty modest. Like what I wanted to do was, I wanted to learn to play rhythm guitar, just so I could get in a band, just to be in a band. I didn't want to be the lead singer. I didn't want to be the lead guitarist. I just want to play rhythm guitar and just find my spot, kind of stand there and in the background and just, you know, just be in the band, you know, just play. And when I used to go I used to go and watch groups, I used to always watch the rhythm guitar player. You know, I always liked the rhythm guitarist, you know, for some reason. And I didn't become a lead guitarist until I got thrown out of the first band I was in. And a kid came over that was going out with my sister. I think he came over to see my sister. But I was around. The way he got in was he asked, "Hey, I got a band, and do you want to play guitar?" And and I said, "Well, okay, you know, I can't play very much, but you know, I know a few notes." And first solo I ever learned was to "It's All Over Now," Rolling Stones. You know, I went home. I remember the night I got thrown out of the band. I went home and so I'm gonna learn, you know. And I learned that solo.
Est-ce que vous étiez habillé sur scène à la mode anglaise, comme les groupes de l'époque?
Well, it was very difficult because at the time we were 15 and we decided we would have uniforms. And so we got these frilly shirts, kind of like the Kinks had. And we had these phony, like, snakeskin vests and Beatle boots. And we all, you know, had pretty long hair. And it was the big decision was like to wear uniforms or not. We wanted to be like this Rolling Stones. So we said, no, we don't want to wear uniforms. But your manager, who was probably an adult at the time, you know, they wanted you to. It was the same thing. They wanted you to play weddings and wear uniforms. You know? But you know, it was in those days the bands were pretty. It was difficult to play the Beatles songs because you had to be able to sing really well because they had all those harmonies, you know. So we ended up like doing a lot of the Stones kind of stuff. You didn't have to sing quite as good to do their stuff, but you know, those are the bands that we kind of patterned ourselves after time.
pouvoir s'écouter. Comment l'avez-vous rencontré?
When I got in my early 20s, I was pretty much based around Asbury Park most of the time, and people didn't didn't really leave that much, you know. Like my sister, New York was always an hour away, and like she hardly ever been, like, you know, and that's the way it is with a lot of people there. Like, it seems like the distance is not the mileage, you know. It's like, it's a whole different way of, you know, people go up there, they're afraid, you know, they think they're going to get mugged. Or my sister went up and she couldn't find Fifth Avenue, and so she came back home. It was like she got confused, that was it. But I was sitting on my porch in Asbury, and a guy came along and said, "Hey, come on up, I know this guy, and he publishes songs, and why don't you sing him a few songs?" So I said, okay. So I went up and I met this guy, and he said he was interested in managing me. But then I went away for some reason. I took a trip for about 3 months. I went across the country to California. And then when I came back, I called him up, and he remembered me. And about a week later, I went in his office, and he says, "Well, we're going to go to Columbia." His idea, what's the biggest record company? Columbia. You know, all right, who's the biggest guy over there? You know, and that's just how that was his approach. And for some reason or another, John Hammond's secretary gave us an appointment. And so I remember I went in, and I had like this beat up guitar, I was no guitar case, and I sat down, and my manager, Mike, was a very, he was pretty wild, you know. He was like, before I played a note, he got up and started saying, like, you know, I was the greatest thing that ever hit the planet, and, you know, all this, you know, all hyping me up already. And like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh God, you know, they're gonna throw us out of here before I get to play anything. And then, you know, John Hammond says, "We'll play a song," and I played "Saint in the City." And it was right after I played one song, he says, "Yeah," he says, you gotta be on Columbia Records, you know. And I forget, it was like that connection. That's the dream, you know. It was like I was about 22, and I was a person that I never believed things until, you know, I wasn't one to get too excited too easily, because I'd been disappointed too many times. And I remember we walked out of the office that day, and we were like, you know, plus the guy, he was one of my heroes, you know. I'd read all about him, and I knew a lot about him. I knew he discovered Dylan, and I was a tremendous fan of Dylan, particularly at that period in my life. I was like, I threw myself back into his music in my early 20s, you know. And it was one of those things that don't happen, that happened. You know?